Here we go. Hi, Daniel. Pleasure to have you on my podcast and on this video and for this interview today. As we discussed, the topic for today is the theme work like a warrior, and I have 5 different topics that I like to explore with you. It's an open conversation, and before we get into it, I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can dive into some of these elements. And I'm very excited to explore some of these things. So over to you, and yeah.
Thank you, Vincent. I'm an explorer. I'm an explorer in sustainability. I'm an explorer at the moment in sustainability and climate change adaptation. I'm thrilled of combining innovation, resilience, and how organizations move around that. So I'm a trained economist. I worked as a sustainability consultant for over 18 years and currently founding a small advisory on climate change adaptation.
Wonderful. On the first element, we actually have, of course, some similarities in our careers. Also on the economist part. So I also studied economics only for 3 years, but still better than nothing, I would say. Now, this is very exciting, and I think this is also something where I wanted to talk with you, because we, as I explained, from why I chose to write this book, there's so many things that you learn over time in business, and how to make it the most impact and be really effective and efficient as in what we do. And I collected some of these elements and came up with these themes over time. And let's just start simply. The first chapter, or the principle, the first thing that I discovered or that I wanted to talk about is the topic of groundedness. So I'll be very interested to hear about what that means to you, and how do you practice staying grounded?
Let's start with a practical example. I like the idea of commuting to work, and especially during the time when we all had to stay home, the commuting lacked a bit. And nevertheless, I commuted to work. I exited my door, went around the corner into the woods, inhaled a bit the humid air, a bit sometimes rotten leaves, smell from the forest trees around me, listened to the early birds singing their songs, and then coming home into my home office after my forest commute, and started in a different grounded way. And those little elements can be part of my daily routine, not only walking outside, but sometimes acknowledge the fact that we have a back-to-back meeting schedule, and just enjoying silence for a minute with nearly a stranger on the other side of the video screen and saying, oh, this was intense so far. Mm-hmm. Let's wait a minute. Okay, we start. So even a physical pause is helping to be grounded again and reconnect for the very excitement and interest that I think every single call deserves.
And how did you discover this for the first time, that this makes sense for you, or how did you try this the first time?
The latter part is maybe an advantage of being a bit extroverted, so I have no problem talking about how I'm feeling, and so I'm talking about I'm exhausted, sorry, and I often get the feedback, yeah, I'm feeling the same, thanks for mentioning it. And so we can start at the level page. And the first one was reading an article, getting an inspiration about the commute, and then reflecting on my own routines that I'm lacking being outside during those hours. And so I just switched a bit this routine, yeah, with inspiration.
And did you do this during the pandemic for the first time, or earlier or later?
Yeah, during the pandemic, I started the commute to my work, and I kept on doing it. Yeah.
It's really interesting to me because I also discovered quite a number of different elements that I built into my routine also during the pandemic. I think it's just increased general stress levels and led maybe, I mean, at the same time, maybe because we were stuck at home, we had stress, but we were also able to reach out to people and to have these conversations, and then realizing that they're quite similar feelings, and there are different techniques that people have discovered. So, for example, for me, I got the recommendation to take cold showers if I feel stressed, or as a general recommendation in the mornings. And it took me some time to build that into my schedule or to actually stick to it. But now I've been doing this for over a year, and I admit I start with a hot shower and then I change to cold. So I don't go straight into the cold shower, but.
Yeah, interestingly, the result, cold shower, is similar across our family. So my two boys and my wife and myself, we often do the cold shower, but it's different intense. So for my younger son, energy savings, cost savings was a thing. Yeah, for my older son, it's a bit of I'm tough. For my wife, it's good for the blood circulation, and for me, it's a mixture out of all three. Yeah, so the result is the same, but different triggers. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. I could see why. Yeah, that really makes a lot of sense. It's and it shows like how different motives, lead to the same result. That's nice. And tell us a little bit about this forest near where you live. Is this a big one, small one, and where is it?
The forest is between some river castles in the northern Rhine area where I'm living. So there's, I think in the 15th, 16th century, some lords have built their castles and used the surrounding forests for their hunting ground. So those forests are still connected. Many of those ponds and rivers are crossing it. So it's rather humid. It's not so big, but still big enough that once I was building the house, the deers were conquering my emerging garden and eating up all the young plants until they were ready and nearly knocking at my kitchen's window and saying, "Can you please plant more? We want to eat more of those fresh plants." So I'm pretty close to the woods, whereas on the other side, the city is starting and I can walk to the train station. So I have a bit of both worlds.
Nice. And are there any other elements that you consider or that that ground you whenever you feel maybe, I mean, it doesn't have to be stress, I mean, we sometimes just have a feeling, or at least I sometimes feel like I don't know what to do next. Like what are the real priorities? That's a lot of things on my written down or in my head, and it's not really stressful, but it's kind of like finding the orientation and thinking like, okay, which of these are really the ones that I should do first? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I have a bench in a bit of swampy area during my walk, and this is my place to disconnect. There's an apple tree on the right. There's an apple tree on the left. I have the view over a little pond. Some bigger single tree is standing 100 meters on the right. The farther woods are starting at the horizon, and then at that bench, I sit down with my book and a pen, and no other digital device. And when I'm completely overwhelmed with all these different multitasking things and meetings, I sit there. I have my pen and my book and write down my concept, my structure until I'm ready. And it takes between 30 and up to 80, 90 minutes that I was sitting there until I was clearing up my mind and having a clearer way forward for a single problem written down in my book. And this maybe it's another example for grounding technique that is helpful for me.
Absolutely. This is actually relates to something that I discovered. I used to go running regularly in the mornings at first because I realized that it would just give me energy in the morning and also clear my head. I actually switched to meditation since then, but now I go to the gym instead and do some physical activity. So not the endurance anymore, but the effect is the same. And I noticed that especially when it comes to something like you described, like conceptual work or developing a storyline for a presentation, or generally just getting some structure to your thoughts, that I really have to do it in the morning, and I keep my phone off at that time. I don't even open it. I don't even switch like airplane mode off. I just leave it off until I'm actually done with this stuff, and then I know, okay, I have a plan. It doesn't even matter if I have to do the presentation immediately or maybe the next days or something, but when it's on my mind, I take my time, I go through this like you do as well, keep everything else, and then once I have something on paper, I can proceed.
Oh, nice. Right.
Nice. So, I mean, there's also something that I think, especially, it's clear that I think we discovered with the pandemic that it's something that when you have such a strange situation coming from the outside, that it leads, in the best cases, I suppose, to some introspection and some exploration of these concepts. So thanks for sharing this. I think this hopefully is some inspiration as well to people looking for some other ideas to come together. So there's also some other elements that I thought about, and maybe let's move on to the topic of satisfaction. I mean, there's lots of ideas around getting into a flow state, and working with a proper purpose. So yeah, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Maybe also as a pointer, when I thought about these concepts, I thought, okay, satisfaction is definitely something different from happiness. It's more of the being content with something and working on something meaningful, rather than happy. Happiness is something I don't think you can aim for. It's more like indirectly. So I was wondering what you would think about these concepts.
Satisfaction now first, yeah?
Yes, please.
Mm-hmm. I can quote from my freshly conducted Ikigai coaching session. That was really a blast. Ikigai is a concept where you are triggered by a coach to write down first all the things you love, all the things that you feel inspired of, all the things that help you get into this flow that you just quoted, and you write on flip chart cards. Yeah, so put it to the ground. Second, all your talents, and write down all your weirdest talents you can imagine. Write down your exams, write down your special skills. Let it be a dancing skill, let it be, I don't know what, everything that you really can do that you're good at. And third, you write down what the world is just expecting to get from you. So what is the world awaiting from your talent, from your activities?
Yeah.
And the fourth one is, what are the things that you earn money with? And don't write only my job. Maybe it's a certain thing that you earn money with. And eventually I had 83 of those cards on the ground. So a long writing exercise. And then the satisfaction part comes where all those 4 bubbles kind of intersect. Is there something you are earning money with, that you're good at, that the world is awaiting you, and that you love? Wow, yay! This feels good. Yeah, this feels really good. And
this is Ikigai.
This is Ikigai. This is
okay.
Ikigai. Yeah. So, and my coach in Munich guided me through that exercise. This was really warm-heartening. It was reconnecting with my strengths. This was reconnecting with the things I love to do. And I found something at the intersection. Yeah, and this really propelled me forward to continue with this satisfactory work. Yeah.
Yeah. And what was it? What was the outcome for you?
My outcome was, for me, it's called the shift from climate mitigation to climate adaptation. And for me, the shift is at the moment a working title for a big conference I'm planning. Will be the first corporate climate adaptation conference in November in Berlin. But it's not only the conference that I really love. It's my founding a company that is conducting that conference. It is working with the people I love to work with. If I have another idea how this conference may look like, I just do it. If I need to include another perspective, yes, I feel inspired to do so. And yes, I will earn money with that conference because I will enrich other people's and companies' perspectives. I'm at the forefront of the curve, how adaptation is currently perceived. So I do something new that I really love. So this explorer mode that I mentioned in my introduction, this is what I can really kind of live with the shift. Explore climate adaptation and the meaning for corporations and organizations, and connecting it was what I really can do, which is sustainability, consultancy, connecting people, enabling people to dare something new, and learning together, and inspire the people to work together. And this is all coming together for me in the shift. So this was in this piece.
Yeah. Can you maybe explain a little bit more about what that means, the mitigation, coming from the mitigation to the adaptation, why it's important, and why this is something, from your point of view, something really new and that has to be done now and focused on?
Yeah. Maybe two extreme examples. One is the big flood in the Ahrtal, and the second one is the big flooding recently this year happening in northern Germany. And just imagine this big Ahrtal flood area where the houses flushed away, and then
this was in southern Germany, right? Southern Germany. Was it 2 years ago already?
Yeah, 3 years ago. Yeah,
3 years ago already.
Yeah, half. Yeah, and then you see this, just as imagine it, and then you switch a bit your view to the left, and then you see windmills producing renewable electricity. And what do you feel? So one part of the maybe is thinking, oh, we are released. We're producing green energy. Nothing can happen anymore. But the other part maybe thinks of, what is actually this windmill helping me to prevent the next flooding? So it's completely disconnected. Renewable energy is today not helping anybody protect my house from the next flood. Yes, every ton CO2 mitigated today is of course helping to create a climate with less extreme weather in the future. So another example from the northern floods in Germany a couple of weeks ago, the federal state minister was walking in rubber boots the dike, and the flood was already that high that the first water flows are crossing the dike, and the minister was tapping with his rubber boots across the dike. And he held a speech and said, look, that's why we need to save CO2. And one of the surrounding farmers from his flooded field said, actually, when I take a closer look, what I do see here is water flooding the dike, not CO2 is flooding the dike. It's maybe a cynical expression, but it's an outcry of help. It's an outcry that CO2 reduction is not fortifying our dikes.
Yes.
CO2 reduction today is not preventing us from any heat stroke tomorrow or in the next summer to come, or from the next drought or from the next storm. So we have to really rethink and shift our understanding of how to become more resilient in our supply chains, in our value chains from an organizational perspective, to help us to cope with the new extreme weather normals that are coming. Besides further CO2 decarbonization efforts, of course. We cannot only do adaptation and then hope for the best. No, this is not going to work, but we need to balance mitigation and adaptation in a much more intense way than we've done it before. And before, I mean, just flip through every single sustainability report from the major companies and try to find something on adaptation. Mostly it's on net zero. So that's why I'm stepping up and say, there's a shift. We need to rethink and act now.
Yeah, and this to me it makes a lot of sense, because as you describe it, there's such a huge gap between so far what we focused on and the results that we, unfortunately, at the moment we cannot stop for a while and probably decades to come. And finding that balance, I think, is essential, because otherwise, like you described so well with the wind energy, we can see it, great, we invest a lot of money, and then we still will have these effects. So it's a fascinating topic, I think. And this conference you are starting, this I mean, we talked about it separately a little bit. So that's coming up in November, I think you said, this year.
5th and 6th November,
I mean, this is
in March. My website will launch, and yes, we can distribute it to your listeners and respect.
Oh, absolutely. And I can already say, I definitely want to stay in touch on this and revisit some of these elements. This is really amazing. So let's turn maybe to something in this context of work, and maybe let's get some inspiration here from my chapter under actually satisfaction. One last point. So I have one topic or one subchapter which I call "Fight What Must Be Fought," because I felt like as in this warrior archetype, we can always explain how we want to fight for the good thing and taking responsibility. And this is what you are doing with this idea. You want to take responsibility. You want to fight for the good, that we can have some adaptation activities or adaptation investments as well, so that we limit some of the damage that we know will come from climate change. But with this topic, with this fight, what must be fought, I raised it. What I described is especially elements of cynicism and sarcasm. These are two topics of mine which I felt can be very destructive to a culture, and especially to an organizational culture. So I guess my question is, can you relate to that a little bit, or maybe you have something else where you think, if it's something about a work relationship or a work situation, there's something that really annoys me, where I think I have to step in and I have to say, please stop. Let's not do it this way for these reasons. Let's do it another way. So maybe, I mean, there's two ideas, but maybe you have something else that you would like to share, and that you think that might be would be important.
Speaking up against sarcasm.
For example, so I used these two examples in my book. I said there's like sarcasm can be very destructive from my point of view, or cynicism even more. So if this resonates with you, maybe you can comment on this, or maybe you find something else where you feel like if you're in a situation where you have to step in and you have to say, okay, let's stop. This is not helping. Yeah. Maybe a behavioral thing.
Yeah, I mean, as a long-time consultant, I would like to talk about the relationship with clients and how we speak about it. Mm-hmm. And, earlier in my career, I have an example from a client that, and he was telling me why it is hard for him, and he doesn't really like to work with a woman in a team. And
a woman, like generally, or was it
general?
The person? In general.
It was in general. Okay. In general, woman as a leadership position, it's not good. Yeah. And as a youngster, I had to step up and say, this is not right. Yeah. And his idea was, I mean, it's hardly possible to quote, but it's in the context I dare to quote it. It's maybe it's 10 years ago. It's from a different time, but it's still an example. Mm-hmm. Either a woman is a beautiful one, and then as a leader, she's distracting everybody else, and that's why she's on top. Or she's not beautiful, and then she must be that tough that it's not pleasant to work with her.
Wow.
And I mean, what else can you say? This is wrong, huh? And I did a bit both. I said I answered in a similar way, and said, "Dear Mr. So-and-so, don't you think that you will distract your very colleagues in the next workshop as well when you step in the room?" And he was like shrugging a bit and said, "Okay, maybe he got an idea of how absurd his theory was. You can still work in either cases." But it felt really, I'd say, I felt ashamed being exposed by that sarcasm of a work ethics, and I had to give in a lot of energy to stay on a one side positive way as a consultant versus client, and saying, "Stop, I don't want to hear more of that. This is maybe your thing, but for me, it's wrong." So example number one.
No, this is great, but before you go on,
Yeah.
Just a question. And how do you feel like anything changed in his perception, and then over time did something change? And also, secondly, how did that make you feel when you actually responded like that, and when you made your statement?
I mean, this statement from him was also a reflection of a certain culture, that this culture allows those statements. I mean, he told it me publicly in a canteen. So I felt a bit of awkward in what kind of company I'm in here, yeah? And it, I had the feeling I had to protect also the way my colleagues working together with this company, because when I have female colleagues, I mean, of course they can protect themselves, but in what kind of workshop context I'm bringing them in? Will they be appreciated? And the way I appreciate them, it's so many discrepancies arose in my head as a young consultant. I struggled a bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And did you notice anything did anything change after a while? Do you remember anything changing, or
no? It was no. You mean after my comment?
Yes.
I did not have the chance to have a second interview on a scale from 1 to 10, how my comment has changed his attitude. No, I haven't done that, unfortunately. But probably my statement was maybe the beginning for him to rethink. And nowadays, those statements are unthinkable, I think. Yeah.
Because I'm really fascinated by this, because a lot of things. There's so many things that come together in this kind of moment. So many things about you speaking the truth. You stepping up for something which you feel is unfair or unjust. It's a cliche. It's sexist, obviously, and it's also clearly something which my interpretation would be, when you make these kind of generalist statements, you are always wrong, of course. Yeah, it's just very on the one hand, you're wrong because you can never generalize this way anyway, and secondly, it's such a dangerous thing to do, because the other cost is that you limit your own perception. If you can only think in these kind of pigeonholes, well, then you limit your own awareness and your own consciousness and your own ability to analyze what is going on, and how to work with different people on what type of topics.
Yeah. And the one thing for me I've learned, and maybe my other the clients as well, this speaking up part. It is so small to say no, and I don't agree on that, but it's also so powerful. Only later in my career I've learned so many case studies and research on different things, that speaking up is the thing that it's how to say, the one domino part that's falling the first, and then it's having a chain reaction of yeah, only that can, only that can really influence other people. If you silence over those sarcasms, you are agreeing to them.
Yes.
And you have to say something and say stop. And then you realize that those sarcasms and cynicisms are not really strong, because they kind of collapse as a paper house, as we say in German. Yeah.
Yes. I also had this situation that I now remember at a client, also many years ago, over 10 years ago, for sure. And I actually discussed some of the problems also in my book, but the specific situation I got in was where I also had to basically speak the truth because it was the right thing to do. And I didn't, to be honest, I didn't care at the moment anymore whether there would be maybe some wrong perception or some criticism from my own company. And literally at the time, it was something where the contract that had been set up had contradictions in them. And so that the service that we were designing could not work, or could not at least be economical and efficient in a certain element. And then I was invited, or I had a discussion on this topic, being invited in this session with 5 client executives basically, and I felt going into it with a little bit also as a junior consultant, a little bit not overwhelmed, but I thought, okay, this is going to be quite interesting. And then they asked me about it, and I decided I have to go for the honest truth and saying, I don't think this will work. We have to have a discussion how to make it work, because you can see here, this is creates so much complexity that it cannot make any sense for any of either for you and for the company. And then it was actually quite funny in a way, because I think that at the same time as they appreciated me being honest, they were going through this mode of being very outraged, almost saying like, oh, what is this? We cannot believe this. And then they would turn to me every time they have this outburst. It's like, oh, this is incredible. This is crazy. How can this happen? I thought we were working with a professional company. And then they would turn to me and say like, don't take this personal. Don't take this personal. And then they would continue going like, like this. So I was sitting there not taking it personally and just sort of like watching what happened. And and in the end, it's well, I mean, it was out of my hands at the time anymore, but then people had to deal with it, and I had actually raised it internally as well, and nothing was done. So yeah, I felt and this is actually something that I wanted to ask you as well, because when you told us the story, there's something that came up with me that I read about from this psychologist, who says that when we speak the truth, or he puts it this way, you should only say things that make you feel stronger afterwards and not weaker. So the question is to you, did you feel stronger or better afterwards?
Sure. Yeah. And it felt really good to state my mind, to state my opinion and say, okay, listen, could be the same other way around. Yeah. So, I mean, that's why your argument is false. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. And you wanted to share a second example as well? Like
yes, there was a second example out of many. Yeah, maybe a small one. Even small words in a team can represent certain cynical or degrading behavior. And the one side in a client in a consulting team, people started to talk about the client with their first name, which is uncommon in German. And it was, from my outer perspective, a way to make the client look smaller, look less competent. And I insisted on, no, this is Miss La 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 or Mr. La La La, and not Ralf Dieter Claudia. And it changed the way how we talked about the client. It changed the way how we took them seriously. Yeah? Only a small word. Another example from those small words. Yeah, it's an intern came to me and said, yes, I have half Italian heritage, and that's why one of your colleagues is calling me señorita all the time. But actually, in my region, this is not the nicest meaning of calling señorita a woman. And I could step in and say, okay, dear colleague, not good idea, just use her name. And so on and so on. I mean, it's always a thing of speak up, and only even those small words can make a difference to the work environment. I was part of the Women Initiative and tried to figure out why women at our company felt less included. And it was, again, because of small talks, because of certain discussions about topics that are not really relevant for women. And if the majority talks about that topic and then women cannot join, it's also small little words that make a difference. And we need to be more sensible about it and speak up how I'm feeling, how you're feeling. Maybe I even ask, and then I find the right fertile ground for productive working together.
Yeah. And on the first part that you just said, it's so interesting because it's something that is part of, I would say, personal growth, of learning to have that courage to speak out and to speak up in a respectful way, of course, but in a way that where the opposite person can at least listen to it. If they do something with it, it's out of our control. But I think that's part of you're building up that courage and doing that. And then secondly, of course, as we can see, it's so important to think about the organizational culture, going back to what we discussed earlier as well with the cynicism and these other examples. And I think this is something very sometimes really not taken seriously by some leaders, and sometimes you can forgive it by maybe saying, okay, they're maybe distracted or they don't realize it. But I think it's I'm actually quite strict with this kind of thing by now, and I actually started like this quite early on. I remember when it was almost my second project. I think this was 2005, and I remember there were some people and they were sharing some really, really inappropriate stuff, even via company email. And first of all, I didn't want to receive anything. And when they were doing it, I actually talked to some people and said, hey guys, I mean, this is, first of all, completely inappropriate. No one will tell you anything about what you do in your private lives, but this is, I mean, not just inappropriate, but it was also irresponsible and could have led to some huge issues. But the more not even the more dangerous thing is, but it's these little things that if they're not taken seriously, they damage the entire culture, like you said as well. If you don't act against them, then you are accepting them, or you are also by default almost supporting them, because you're not policing them. You're not doing anything and not leading by making it clear that it's unacceptable. And I think this effect is sometimes completely underestimated, and it's not taken seriously, but I think it should be.
Yeah, and if you understand culture with the definition of patterns that are repeatable and repeated, then you can stop the repetition and you change the culture.
Yes, exactly. And it's so funny, yeah, because this is why I love having these conversations, because and also what I thought about when I came up with these 5 chapters, that there's not really you can do anything. You can go through it like as an order, but it's not important, because we are already seeing some of these elements. Like the last element here, topic that I wanted to discuss is being a role model. But we can already see the concept of a role model here, because this is what is my conclusion about this topic of a role model. You shouldn't want to be a role model to flatter your own ego, because you think, oh, this will make me look so great. This is exactly the wrong way to go about it. But rather, by having the courage to doing this and by stepping in, you can become by default a role model, which then enables others to follow this example, and then you influence the culture in a positive way.
I've got a picture for that is sometimes helping for many of those examples from sculpturing. And It's like a role model. It's not there. You need to shape the being of a role model out of your actions. So when you consider a stone, a blank stone from a mountain, and it's a form. But when you start sculpturing, you are freeing the form that you have in your mind out of the stone with your actions. You put away things here, you put some stone away there, and eventually, I don't know, comes out a dolphin, comes out a tiger, comes out a tree, or the role model. So if you're sculpturing on your actions and say, okay, I need to show this, I need to act like this, then you are freeing your role model being out of the stone, and then you make a difference. Yeah. And you only are a role model if you are a role model and if you do it.
Yeah.
You need on sculpturing all the time. Yeah?
Have you ever had a situation where someone then disagreed with this kind of point of view, or in a related topic?
A role model, everybody is a fan of a role model, but it's sometimes a bit artificial, I think, that you have to be like this, or that people switch on and switch off being a role model. Yeah, say, okay, now I have my 10 minutes of being a role model, and then they say, okay, now I'm normal again. So, and this maybe it's a bit of in-between disagreement. Yeah, either you are somebody that is in a consistent way, somebody who is looked at and being a role model, even including mistakes. Yeah, nobody is perfect. Doesn't mean that you have to be always perfect, but the acceptance of certain mistakes, the acceptance of incapabilities of certain things, and reflection about it, further development as part of as matching part of mistakes, then it becomes a thing. But you cannot choose to be a role model in the morning and not in the evening.
True. And this is something I think sometimes maybe it gets confused between leadership and being a role model. I think the leadership part, to me, is all about taking responsibility, and this can be taking responsibility for a thing, for a cause, but of course taking responsibility for others as well. And this is why I liked on some projects that people were saying on the better projects, of course, how people were saying, hey, even if you've just joined this project as an intern for maybe a day or 2 days, you will automatically, you can already take or be a leader for someone who maybe joined 1 day after you, because you already have 8 hours or 10 hours of advanced knowledge, basically, of this person. So you can already step up and you can help the entire community, so to speak, by being a leader and taking responsibility for the person, even if you feel like you don't know that much, but you still don't know more than this person. So it's all about the responsibility. And role model is the, like you described as well, it's really understanding what is the moral way to act in any situation. Because if you go to in an office or something, for example, you go make a coffee, well, you are a role model if you make sure that everything looks perfect after you have made your own coffee. If you leave a mess, you're definitely not a role model because you behaved in an unethical way towards others, of course. So I think that's at least my take on the difference.
Now we are only on the personal side. Of course, there are certain moral consensus that how you should behave or not behave. Yeah, check. From a critical perspective, I have to be honest. I think, I know an organization where I had been working, that I was probably not considered as fully role model, and it was not because I was an unethical person. Then it's a cultural mismatch. What I think is good, a way of communication, a way of feedback, a way of direct engagement, a way of freedom, a way of coaching, a way of interacting with people. Even the idea of an energy level, that I confronting my team with. It was all good intense and no missteps officially. Still, I felt they have a different idea of a leader. And it's for me, it's a way of learning that there's not a universal way of role model. There are role models in that organization for sure, yeah. But I was not matching their expectations of being a role model. In all other organizations, yeah, for decades, I got massive feedbacks and good relationships that how nice it is and how good it is and how inspiring. All fine, yeah. It's not really changing my way of working, but it's, for me, it gave me a certain additional awareness of the adaptability of being a role model, and it is also connected to a culture. And then everybody needs to decide, is my opinion of how a role model should look like fitting to the organizational one, and rather step back and step off the organization earlier, and then trying to make a forced matching. Yeah, that's a bit hard then, yeah.
That's true. And this is also fascinating because it means that this idea of the role model, yeah, it's sort of contingent upon the culture or the organization that you move in or that you belong to, no matter how long. I see your point for sure. I'm thinking thinking back to this other idea, which I also think about when I was thinking about this warrior archetype, to also have the strength to realize when, and I described it more in a sense of boundaries, but to also describe that you have to take responsibility for your own, for yourself as well, and you have to take care of yourself. And I think in these situations where you see that your talents and your way of leading or your ways of doing things are not appreciated, then yeah, the best course of action can be to say, this is not for me. I'm watching here my values, my boundaries, and if this is not appreciated, then it's better for me to take my talents somewhere else where they are appreciated and where I can, match the purpose and the culture as well.
If you like, I've got another warrior kind of thing, role model example.
Absolutely.
From fighting sports. I like fighting for sports, different ones. And in sparring mode, you fight with each other with contact. Yeah? So, right. And over 3 minutes, pause, 3 minutes, pause. So. And in training, you like to learn from each other during sparring, even though it's going to be harder. So what is the fighter doing? So you have either the role model for, I quote, role model for the audience. Oh, I'm doing now the best things. I'm having the hardest punch. I'm having the hardest kick, the highest kick. I'm trying out new things. But then you have your sparrings partner, probably the last one, as your sparrings partner, because he or she doesn't enjoy that. So good fighting role model in sparring is you speak up after the first punches with somebody new, to say, is this okay for you? And you check in, say, yes, that's good. If it's not okay and somebody is hitting me harder than I expected, I have two possibilities. I say I speak up, or I go in rage mode and hit back harder. Well, what is happening then? The rage mode is coming back and it's getting harder again and again and again. And this leading again nowhere. So we are trained in sparring mode to talk about ourselves, to bring in good technique at a low level of strengths, to test out what is the best trainings level with each other. And you still are a warrior with a good attitude and a fighting attitude. You keep track of distance, you keep track of techniques, you keep track of your punches and your kicks, but still keeping your opponent, which is your partner, in mind. And you are actually fighting as a team, and it's not against each other, it's a learning from each other. And so this is probably the closest warrior example I can give you from my experience.
But that's a cool example. That's really cool. And and as you were explaining, I saw a parallel to to how sometimes conversations, or how sometimes I would say the teamwork can develop as well, and on a completely different level, only about when it's only about things and discussions. You can picture both elements as well. Again, you can choose to just try and want to be right, and then you just escalate basically. And it's not about learning something, and it's not about being maybe proven wrong or receiving evidence or ideas that maybe your opinion is not complete yet, or maybe it's even completely wrong. Could be the same thing. But you can see that sometimes you can observe it as well with people where they keep talking, but the point is not actually to finding an agreement or a solution or something that works. The point is only to prove that each person is right, and that doesn't solve anything. So if you keep that humility in that warrior spirit, like you describe, literally in these battles or in this kind of fighting situation, of checking in with the other person and then understanding where each person is coming from, you can actually have a much better, valuable outcome.
That's true. And so in that way, while checking in, I can fight with women that are half the size of mine, and I can fight with stronger guys that are double the size, and nearly double the size than me, and we still can work together.
And that's again great parallel to working with other people, because sometimes you will work with more junior people, you will work with more senior people, you will work with people who are maybe extremely proficient in a certain field or area, or maybe someone who's just starting. Maybe then there's someone who has great experience in leadership and is very, very high executive, and then someone who's also starting. So with this kind of checking in, you can actually make it much more valuable, instead of just working on assumptions and then kind of, and as I'm sure you've witnessed enough times as well. And then there's talking and discussions, but it's actually clear that people are not really understanding what is being talked about. And then the entire discussion, the entire meeting becomes extremely unproductive. And out of helplessness towards the end, usually someone will step in and say, in the best of situations, okay, let's just make some notes, and then we will revisit this and prepare it for some other time. But this is what I've noticed many times. So if you don't bring that humility of understanding who's actually in the room and who's participating and where they're coming from, you will just make it. Well, you will not get where you want to get.
Yeah, I mean, again, speaking up, asking questions. What are we actually talking about? I remember one call, again, as a youngster, when I like to ask stupid questions, and the whole call, out of 20, 30 consultants, out of a special industry group, talking about a 4-letter abbreviation. And actually, I didn't know. So I dared to ask, what actually are we talking about? So the most stupid question you may talk about or ask as a youngster. And then the leader said, yeah, you should know. This is an important abbreviation. And now, the other guy will explain you. And this guy said, yeah, we talked about it so long and you asked about it, but my junior will explain it to you. And they tried to cascade down and nobody knew it.
Oh my God.
Just asking, sorry. Yeah?
It's crazy. And this is so ridiculous. It's all, attached to with this ego thing of no one, openly admitting, saying, well, actually, what does it mean? No one knows. It's incredible how it just gets perpetuated. I've seen this also. We had a discussion recently in a context, or not that recently actually, but there was sometimes new concepts are introduced and they are based on a new theory or some new concept, from maybe organizational science, and it's always interesting to see if people actually use the term, but also for me the key to actually successfully deploying this, you have to really spend some time to explain what it actually means. And the exact example is the flywheel. So this, when this topic, there's so many different things that I didn't know. I heard it the first time, and then it was explained. And to be honest, I'm I could explain it on a high level, but it's I would not call myself an expert on it. But then as we worked, you could see, and I was kind of not working on this topic full time. It was more like joining it here and there. But what I noticed was that people would actually use kind of like twist the word a little bit, and then you would hear the same word but in slightly different ways. So that someone would say it's a flying wheel, or it's a flywheel, and you could already tell that something's not right. You know, that it starts with the concept. So yeah. Anyway. So this is some fascinating stuff. I have one more thing that I wanted to ask, but but before I do, is there anything else in this context that you would like to share at this time? Because I mean, this is supposed to be, open conversation.
In the satisfaction role model, happiness, impact part, or is impact not still coming?
Yeah. Yes, impact. Actually, great point, because impact is also a very important element. However, so the 5 themes that I basically wrote down were groundedness, satisfaction, happiness, success, and role model. And maybe let's start there, because that's a nice inspiration. Because you mentioned impact. How would you feel? Where does that fit into this scheme, or how does it maybe relate to happiness or to success? I don't know. What do you feel?
For me, it's a root cause, and impact in a psychology term, I think it's self-efficacy, and the feeling that you're recognizing yourself, that you are creating a self-efficacy. Efficiency. One really vivid example is maybe the one or the other listener to this podcast have kids already, and the age of 1.5, the kids' minds, they start to further develop, and they need to do things on their own. Yeah. And they often start crying because many things they cannot do on their own, something like speaking enough, walking around enough, managing the house enough. So they feel a discrepancy. So, and one thing that was really helping with my kids was holding them next to the light switch and letting them switch the light on, and they see the light is on. And they switch it off, and they see the light is off. And this is what they've done. This is the most tangible impact you could create instantly for the kids. So it's only a small example, that you are fully aware of what you can create, what your impact is about. I think this is the self-efficacy I'm talking about. And if you are grounded in that feeling, that you feel the satisfaction in creating impact, I think this is the root cause for happiness, and then your aura eventually creates you being a role model. I tried to get all your chapters in a sentence right now. Maybe you recognize.
It's perfect. I will. Can I use that? But it's but it's so true, because it is in a way. In a way, it relates also to this real feeling of, or I would say, from the happiness. We talked about satisfaction, happiness, and the role model element, and now with the impact. If we go back to the ikigai element, and we're picturing this, of course, that this is something that also is economically valuable. That means you get paid for it. You can make money with it. Then both, of course, you can see. I would say it leads automatically to how I call my chapter success, because it leads to that success in the sense that you're reaching these goals that you set yourself, but you're also, since you've taken responsibility for something that's bigger than you feel like your energy was spent worthwhile because you reach that impact. You also have earned some money, maybe a salary, maybe something else, doesn't matter. Yeah, maybe you're self-employed. It doesn't really matter. But this culminates in that as well. And this is that's what I feel like how that relates to these different topics.
Yeah, the money, you mentioned the money part. Yeah, as part of it, you earn money. Interestingly, when I was combining 3 of those buckets, except the money, I recognized that what I'm doing is maybe also creating some monetary flows for my own. It was at first hard to accept. Oh, I said, is it worth something? Can I charge money for that? It's so good. It's the right thing. How come that there's even a value? I had to laugh. So of course there's a value. Why not? Yeah, I mean, but because the starting point was coming from all the other 3 buckets except earning money. Yeah, and then maybe it's with others, it's that only the money earning part is in the beginning, and you desperately have to find your passion, your capabilities, and what the world actually needs, and then make it somehow congruent. But I started from the other side. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why maybe I'm not yet a millionaire. Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually had I've had some really fascinating conversations with a friend of mine, Fahad, with whom I've actually recorded the first episode of this podcast. And he is very much, it's very fascinating because he's extremely entrepreneurial and he has a huge ambition. And he also, for him, it was very important to translate that ambition also into monetary terms and to set some really ambitious targets for him. And I found this very inspiring, and I've done a similar exercise, although I would assume that my financial ambitions are probably less than him, which is we just have to figure that out for ourselves. But it seemed to me it seemed to be or at least I felt like it's important to consider as well. And another thing I would say is that I went through a crisis of, I would say, almost a little bit of meaning. I spent almost 15 years working in the consultancy, and then after I left, I thought, okay, I don't know where that came from, but I thought, okay, is this actually me? What am I doing? Should I remain a consultant? Should I work in consulting? Should I try to do this going forward? And then over time, as I was working freelance as a freelance consultant, I actually realized that yes, this is actually what I'm really good at, and it makes sense for me, and it makes sense for the clients that I work with. The only real interesting thing that I came across was this question, which I still have no answer for it, but the question whether the company that I work for has to have a purpose which I can relate to. And so far, I know that it's definitely more meaningful for me if the company or the client that I work for has a purpose that I can relate to more than others. But it hasn't been that a company where I don't really mind. I don't care. Maybe either way. If it's it's nothing. I've had the fortune not to work for anything I would say like super critical in terms of I don't know, tobacco or something, but or which some people might find very questionable, or almost immoral. Yeah, but this is something I've been thinking about, and I haven't found the answer yet. But maybe it's also almost like a luxury discussion, because after all, I mean, we do have to figure out, at least to have some kind of economic basis. Even like you said, we're not millionaires or whatever, but we want to be successful in the sense that the impact that we generate and the economic value that we generate matches at least some kind of expectation that we want to be able to afford something that's nice without having some crazy ambitions or some crazy expectations.
Yeah, sounds good. And a match working with whom you would like to work, with the capabilities you can apply. Yeah.
So, yeah, I have maybe as a maybe as a last topic, because I think this is quite. I mean, it's been fascinating. So but maybe we have one more topic and then we wrap it up. And I just pick an example, also like a sub chapter from one of my chapters here, and which it's actually from the satisfaction topic. Sorry, no, correct me. I have to correct myself. It's from the happiness. And I wonder what you think about this. So the first subchapter is called "Practice to see the good in every situation," or "Two opposite things can be true at the same time." Does that in any way relate to your experience, or do you have anything that comes to mind that where you from a working situation where you can now, upon reflection, you can see that playing out in a way?
Positive side was the first one, and the other one, two things.
Practice to see the good in every situation. In every situation, and it's actually related. It's actually the subchapter is actually called "Practice to see the good in every situation," or, and in the sense that, to formulate it differently, two opposite things can be true at the same time. Meaning, something can seem like a huge failure, but on the other hand, there's something else that comes from that which is really, really good.
The exercise I know called reframing. It's from social work. You work with sometimes with desperate people, and everything is bad, and you may reframe the situation. And social workers are really good at reframing and offering different perspectives. It's, I think, as an alternative viewpoint, it's good. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't mislead to a positive only view, because there are bad things. That's why two opposite things at the same time may be true is I like more than always seeing the good side, because this is sometimes a bit of woo-like and mindset, and you only need to be a good guy, and then you do this and that, and you failed because you cannot see it like this. This is becoming a bit the dark side of this attitude. I think we need to be a bit of cautious, because there are objectively sometimes bad things, or worse things than others, and we need to acknowledge that this is a bad day. Within many days, it's on average still better, and then you can reframe and say, okay, in comparison to what day is it a bad day? Okay, this was a better day. Okay, so you can have a different anchor point. You've got the bad day here, you've got the good thing here, and okay, and then you may start from a resourcefulness view. What did you? What can you? What capability have you considered as helpful to create that good day? I had a positive view. I called a friend. I talked to my mentor, and then I did this and that. Okay, and this made you a good day. So, and what was today? What is the bad day about? The bad day, I didn't call a friend. So I only kind of went dark on my own. So, okay, what conclusion could you draw? Call a friend. Okay, so that's why it's not only a good side on a bad thing. It's also, for me, the comparison to another pole of a situation, and then figuring out what helped me to create this positive viewpoint. Not even from today, or to reframe it, but everybody has good situations and have capabilities to create good situations. And if you connect to those good situations, for me, this is worth more than always reframing.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. This is maybe some examples that I can share. So generally, I had this once very, very markedly when I had this was more in a private sense. So a relationship ended, and while I was sad about it, I knew it wasn't working. So there was no other way. Yeah, it had to end. So and I was definitely sad about it, but I could, for some reason, after about a week or two, I remember, I already felt like, okay, because I tried to go through this exercise, so this reframing, and think, okay, what is it that's still, even though, yes, this, what do you call it? Objectively, it's not nice. It doesn't feel good. And I thought, okay, but what are there any good sides about this? You know, what's the upside, so to speak? And then I did discover, saying, well, the obvious thing is you have more time for yourself now, and you have a lot of things that you want to do, and now you can just do it. And at the time, I felt that it's because it may sound, you know, sort of cynical, or but while I was going through this, I did feel like it's a valuable realization, because it enabled me to do something with my energy rather than sitting around and just be sad, because it's not a very productive thing. It's okay, and it's important, and I even talk about it in my book. You know, it's important to grieve about certain things. You have to give that space. You know, yeah, at the same time as when you have to celebrate some things, also you have to give it some space. But I found this was very interesting, and it was quite the refreshing thought at the time. Mm-hmm. And the other one that I had experienced once was, I was contacted by a headhunter for a position, and this kind of came out of the blue. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll just state, yeah, I'm open. Let's talk. And then for some other company, and then I went through this process, and then everything went really well, and I actually really liked these people, you know, for the company, and I really liked the company, and then I thought, okay, this is going great. And up until the last interviews, which so far, didn't seem to have any problems. And even during these different stages, I received some really excellent feedback. And then, funnily enough, I mean, I can say that now, but funnily enough, at the very end, when I then got contacted again by the HR department, and they actually said, okay, you will not get an offer from us for these and these reasons. In the first moment, I was almost shocked, because I had already, sort of like overly attached myself to the idea of working for them. Yeah. But it was way too early. You know, it was way too early, and also I had fooled myself. Not just because it's still. We have to just understand that there's so much uncertainty there that I just totally ignored that. And also there was something almost more sinister. There was almost like a bit of a survival mindset type thing, where I felt like, oh yeah, and this will be great, and then, oh yeah, it's going to be a great salary, not even considering that, you know, there's always a price for, you know, a cost for every salary. It's going to be a lot of work. I hadn't even pictured that. And even worse, I discovered as then through the state of where I was shocked. First of all, I did not like being shocked at all. Secondly, I thought, okay, I don't like this state of being, and having become, you know, having sort of entered the situation where the ego took control, and your sort of like your sense of attachment to this idea of making more money kind of overrides your other interests and maybe the other purposes that you wanted to do. And then after maybe, you know, 1 or 2 days, it takes a bit of time to process, but out of these elements, I thought, hey, this was actually a lesson. You know, it's almost a lesson that I learned, which was then, coming back to the topic, a good thing out of a bad situation, so to speak. And then after that, I felt much better realizing that, and not, you know, and realizing and yeah, going back to what I like talking about as well, is about this ego thing. Thinking like, hey, no, do what you think is necessary. What is it that you want to do? Find the ikigai properly, and stay detached from these kind of situations as much as you can, because the more attached you become, sometimes the more at risk, sometimes you become the more fragile, in a sense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, could be another podcast of yours. Let's say something like Reject and Rise. Being great.
I will write this down right now. This is amazing.
or being rejected and rise again or something. Because everybody knows that. So starting ambitiously to apply somewhere with all the good hope, preparing for the company, writing a cover letter, and all the experiences kind of funnel into that position, and then no, it's not the case because of, for whatever reason. And the reason may be funny, after a while, and then how do you cope with it? I mean, as you said, I mean, there are probably many of your listeners know this situation, so maybe there's a source of strength to being rejected and rise again.
There's actually a friend of mine. She's written a book. I'm not sure when it came out, but not that long ago. Her name is Nita Bhushan, and she called her book "That Sucked. Now What?" So it kind of relates to that. I haven't read it yet, but I wanted to shout out to her anyway. So Daniel, I would say this has been really cool. Let's wrap it up. But before we do, please let us know again. How can people find you? And let us know. I will also, once I publish the podcast, I will put stuff in the show notes as well, so that people can relate. If there's anything that you want to share at this moment about, or as I said, I mean anything at all, this is the opportunity. But also, how can people find you? And then we'll wrap it up, and we'll meet again soon, I would say.
Vincent, thank you very much for inviting me for this thrilling and short while conversation. I enjoyed being part of your book chapter thinking, and if anybody of the listeners enjoyed the idea of climate adaptation, feel free to contact me. LinkedIn, of course, is always open, and looking forward to seeing you at least on my conference in November.
Absolutely. Great stuff. All the best until then, and we'll talk soon. We'll be in touch.
Ciao.